Yo, what up, world? Big Prophet Jewel of the day. All right, two things I want to say before I really get into it. Try to make one. I tried to make a video yesterday. I listened back to it today, and that shit was boring as fuck. Like I had no energy. I mean, I just finished work, was tired. I listened back, and that shit just made me. I didn't even get through a minute, so I want to redo it, do it proper. Put some enthusiasm, some energy in that shit. So at least I would even want to watch this shit. And then two, I might be cussing. You might hear some motherfuckers, some fucks and niggas throughout this thing. So I apologize if that hurt your ears. But just know I'm only saying that when I get hype up, when I have that enthusiasm, I use expletives. Can't really help it, but fuck it. I don't really want to help it, yo. I just want to express myself, and hopefully you're able to just filter out and get the substance with it, you know, but I gotta put more energy into it. All right, so first things first, this is the meaning of meaning. All right, so I do it mostly like I did it yesterday, yo. Like the beginning, I want to reference my last jewel that was talking about what is beauty. I bring that up because I spoke a lot about meaning, you know. So like beauty is really depends on your perspective. What beauty is very subjective, but it's your perspective. Now, let's say you go through a rough experience and time goes by, and then you gain perspective on that experience, and then you value that experience. They say, I see the beauty in it now. So beauty is when you value something. Your perspective allows you to value it. Now the thing never changed. The thing itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's not ugly or beautiful. It's your perspective that changes. The way you look at it changes. And that allows you to see beauty. Right? Same with meaning. That's what meaning is. That value gave it meaning. That perspective gave it meaning. It's worth something now. It's not just negative. It's valuable. So you see the beauty in it. All right. So next I want to get into definitions and the etymology. So we talk about meaning is definitions. It's like when I looked up the definition of meaning, they said to convey, the intent to convey, signify, or indicate an idea or thought. Right? So that's the meaning of meaning as far as the literal sense and the definition. But I always go a step further and learn the etymology. You know, I learned from this Moorish brother. He said, you must know the etymon. You must know and look up the etymology and get an etymology dictionary so you can really understand the meaning. Because people that write laws, people that use English, this world, the way they use English and the way they use language, you gotta understand they speak it in a different way. We only understand language on a surface level, just a functional level. It's getting dark as fuck, but just stay with me. You see the light eventually. But yeah, so the etymology shows you the origins of that language, like what it meant before it became English, like English borrows from French, it borrows from German, it borrows from Dutch, it borrows from Latin, borrows from Greek. All these different languages, pieces of that create English. Like English, in the context of all those languages, is pretty new. So it's like the child of all those languages. If you want to understand the child of it, it helps to know the family. Helps to know where they came from. What it meant generations before. So meaning in Dutch, meaning, or German meaning, they both have the same root. A Proto-Indo-European root, like Sanskrit or Latin, that meant mind. The mind, it all comes back to the mind. Every single jewel that I do, it boils down to the mind, the power of the mind. The meaning is what you create in your mind, what you convey, what you conjure up. And you must understand, your mind creates your reality. It's whatever you think the meaning of it is, that's you create, that's real to you. So if you hear a word and it's negative and if it will affect you emotionally if you believe the meaning of it is negative. It will negatively affect you. If you think it's positive, it will positively affect you. It's really how you frame it, how you decide, how you choose to interpret it. And then you create a reality through the meaning, through your mind. Okay? Like to me, like those cuss words, I don't know if I cuss yet. I haven't really got that hype yet. But to me, I don't find cuss words offensive. You have the right to find them offensive if it is. And if you find it offensive, I'm talking to you on a one-to-one basis. You find it offensive, I'll refrain from using that kind of language because I don't want to affect you negatively. But guess what? When I'm just speaking freely, expressing myself, I don't give a fuck. I think it's a good word to express myself. It's an expletive. It's an exclamation mark. You know, that's how I look at it. It's just a sound. All these words are just sounds. Now let's break it down even further, yo. We talk about the etymology, right? And what it used to be. Like, you gotta understand, language probably started with grunts and shit and just sounds the motherfuckers was making, like as cavemans and shit. And we just would understand, like, you know what I mean? And then, just based on the context, you would understand what it was, what it meant. You know what I mean? And then it developed into different sounds, a more complex language guy. But they're still just sounds. Now, these sounds trigger ideas. The more complex the language got, the more complex the ideas became. Or the more complex the ideas we were able to communicate. Now we have languages and like sub-languages and all these different ways to convey ideas. Holy shit, I'm at like 9 minutes already. You know, so like all at the end of the day, it's sounds. It's just sounds that we're making out of our mouth. But we don't realize how powerful these ideas are, this meaning that we give to it, that we attribute to these sounds that are coming out of people's mouth. And we give it too much power sometimes. And that's another thing. All right, so I wanted to bring up about how Mark Manson, he's an author. I really like his work. I listened to his podcast. He wrote the book, Everything is Fucked, the book about hope. It's really dope, about philosophy and mindset, the power of the mind, how you could control your life by learning your mind, how to use your mind. So he brought up this concept on this podcast I was listening to. He's talking about when you internalize something, it has power over you, and when you externalize something, you have power over it. And he was mentioning how meditation or therapy, when you talk to a therapist, the feelings and ideas and thoughts, emotions that you have inside of you, you get them out, you externalize them. And then it helps you have power over it. Or you start journaling. You externalize these thoughts and emotions, and it helps you have power over it. But when it's still inside of you, when you internalize it, when it's in your mind, he said that it has power over you instead of you having power over it. I hope I didn't mess it up. I think I did. But anyways, when you internalize it, he said it has power over you. And I agree with him, but I also wanted to reframe it, because the thing that I don't like is the power over you part, like I think it's really shows the power of the mind, and you have so much power in your mind that you supercharge these emotions, these ideas, these thoughts, this word. You give it power. That's how much power you have, that you can make it expand. Like they say, when you focus on something, it expands. So if somebody said something that struck a chord with you, you think and you dwell on it. And then you charge it with energy, you power it, you empower it. And then the more you dwell on it, the more you focus on it, the bigger it expands, it grows until it's out of proportion. And it doesn't make sense anymore. Like it could overwhelm you. And it's very easy, it happens all the time. And that's why people go through a lot of issues mentally, because we put too much power into ideas that don't serve us. Right? So I believe we definitely should learn ways to externalize that. Right? So when you externalize it, you take an idea that's in your head and you bring it out into the physical world, and it becomes an object that you're able to look at different perspectives. You're able to rotate it, look for this hat, top, bottom. And then you're able to look at it, it becomes a thing. It becomes an object. It's no longer just in your mind overpowering. It has dimension to it. It has limits to it now. Because it becomes a physical object, it becomes a word. Just like literature, like when you write a word down, it becomes a thing now. Like a definition. Until you define a word, it's like there's so many ways to interpret it and misinterpret it. There's all these ways to misinterpret a word, but until you look at the definition, it limits it, it gives it dimension. So it means only this. Within this range, this is the meaning. So that's what happens when we externalize thought. We're able to turn a thought into a thing, and then we're able to control it because it has a limit. Once it's only in your mind, there's no limit, there's no dimension. Peep this. Have you ever walked into a building the first time you're in a building? Tell me if you can relate to this. You walk into a building, this place looks massive. You start looking around. The more you go there, the more you explore around, you see all the different sides of this place. You see the walls, you see all the different rooms. You go outside, you go around this place. You walk around the place, you have a better comprehension of the dimensions. And then you go back inside, the more familiar you are with it, it becomes smaller. In your mind, it doesn't seem as massive. But your mind blows it out of proportion because it only has a small piece of the information. It has a limited perspective. So with that limited perspective, your mind is going to blow it out of proportion and make it much larger than what it is in reality. And more familiar you get with it, with all the different sides, all the dimensions, it limits it. Now that it has a limit, it doesn't feel as big. So being able to externalize something like a thought, you put a cap on it, you put a limit on it. You give it dimension. So now it's not overwhelming anymore. Same with anything, any task that looks overwhelming. When you're able to rationalize it, when you're able to understand all I gotta do is this, you break it down into small steps, then you give it dimension. So it's not so overwhelming. But you have to understand some perspective. You have to have perspective to understand what it really is. And when it's just in your mind, there's no limit. You're gonna put energy into it. It's gonna overwhelm you. And that's just the power of the mind. That's the meaning. You're gonna give a meaning to something. Like when you just meet somebody, you fall head over heels for them. You think they're amazing, but the more you find out about this person, you're like, oh snap, they're human. They're not this amazing, like godlike thing that I thought they were when I first met them. They make mistakes just like everybody, you know? They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So it's perspective. It's perspective. Once you have more perspective, you're able to have a more realistic meaning to it. And it's easier to rationalize. It's easier to understand. So, what I've been doing lately, like the trivium or the etymology. I started off with the etymology and I learned about liberal arts through the trivium. Right? And they say about liberal arts, liberal comes from the word liber in Latin, which means free. They say if you learn the liberal arts, you're a free man because you learn how to think. All education teaches you what to think these days, you know, like the education system will teach you what to think and not how to think. You learn liberal arts, you learn how to think. Now, tell me, like with the liberal arts, it mainly teaches you how to look things up, learn the etymology, learn how to research. It's a lot of reading. It just teaches you how to research and learn the order and the progression of it. And that's the beauty of it. Now, if that makes you free, the lack of knowledge makes you a slave. Lack of understanding, lack of perspective. When the slavery was happening, it was illegal to read. So that kept you a slave. You couldn't find the meaning. You couldn't find perspective. You couldn't do that. They kept you without understanding, without knowledge, without perspective, without being able to find the meaning to these concepts. So that just limits your potential. It gets deep, because when I look up the mind, I research the mind all the time. I believe the mind and the soul are the same thing. You look up the word psyche, there's a Greek word, and that meant the soul. Look up the word psyche. It's the soul. I read this book by Alfred Adler. He was a French psychologist. He was one of the people that helped make the IQ test. And even he said that the IQ test is not an accurate way to quantify somebody's intelligence. But in his book, he was talking about how psychology used to be the study of the soul until psychologists wanted to leave religion and separate religion from science. So they try to drop that idea. So the Greeks believed that the mind and the psyche and the soul were the same thing. So just the idea that the mind and the soul aren't the same is relatively new in the context of human thought. So I'm looking at it, I think it's the same thing. If you're not doing the knowledge, you're not empowering your soul. Spiritually, they keep you weak if you don't get the knowledge, if you don't try to understand the meaning. So when they talk about liberation or liber or the liberal arts being the way to free, to be a free man, that means we're trapped, we're enslaved spiritually. You know, I'm going off on tangents, you know, I'm gonna drop these facts for y'all. I'm gonna go deeper in this shit too, yo. But they don't want you to know how to think. They don't want you to understand. They want us to be powerless. It's a spiritual thing. Knowledge is a very spiritual thing. Understanding. So when we're talking about this, and that's why I say in the mind, you create your reality. That's a spiritual thing. The way you think, your attitude. Let's look at the word value and sentimental value. Sentiment. That's a feeling. That's an opinion. That's an attitude. That's subjective. That's you as an individual. A value. It's the worth. What it's worth to you. How you value it personally. If you have something that's of sentimental value, it's an object. It's a thing. But you charge it with your power, with your mind, with your energy. It's of value to you. It's no longer just a thing. This is part of who you are. So the value could not be exchanged for something like money. Money is a thing. It's not as valuable as what is valuable to you as a person, what is part of you, part of your life. This meaning that it has. You create meaning. This is something that's very real. This affects you. If you were to lose something that is of sentimental value, it would affect you emotionally because it's what it is worth to you. It's a piece of you. This has stories. So meaning is the stories that we tell ourselves. You know? We hear words and we give them stories and we give them meaning, not realizing that we're creating a reality about this thing. We're giving energy and power to these things, these objects. And then we look at people and we treat them like things and objects. We objectify people and act like they're not of value, like they're not worth. Like we're putting energy into things and taking energy away from people in our reality. It's very troubling, man. Just to think about that shit. I'm telling you, man. We create our reality. The way we perceive things. Every jewel I drop is talking about the mind and how you change your perspective, how you can change your life. Every jewel I drop, I've probably dropped at least 20 of these motherfuckers, and every single one of them is the same thing. It's like, yo, you can handle your life better based on how you look at it, based on a perspective. You could just twist it, rotate it, and look at it differently, and then your life becomes easier. Your life becomes better. You're able to enjoy it. It's an attitude, like the sentiment. how you value things. It's an attitude. So I say all that shit to say this, yo. Meaning is what, it's a choice. We choose what it means. We choose what we mean, what people mean to us, what life means. People will be asking, what's the meaning of life, yo? I think we gotta understand the meaning of meaning, then we're able to understand the meaning of life, yo. We have this power. Yo, like in the Bible, they talk about the Garden of Eden, the Adam and Eve, and how the devil enticed them to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. And he said they would be like God if they ate from it. And I heard Jordan Peterson talk about how that represents judgment. Right? So when you judge something and you label it as good or bad, this is the energy that you charge it with. This is a reality that you're creating. Shakespeare said, nothing is good or bad until a man thinketh so. So, meaning, like I said at the beginning, these things are neutral. Like something is not beautiful or ugly until you put your perspective on it. You put your energy or your attitude, your judgment on it. People are getting called ugly, it's because you're reflecting outwardly your attitude, your perspective, your energy, your mindset. You're reflecting outwardly. So yeah, of course you're gonna think it's ugly because you inside you ugly, man. If you saying, like my wife be calling people beautiful all the time because she's beautiful inside. She's able to see that. When you're humble, you're able to see the beauty everywhere. You see monks, they're humble all the time. All the time they try to humble themselves, like I said in the last jewel. And that enables them to see the beauty around them. Beauty is humility. Humility is beautiful. That's why we love people when they're humble. We love celebrities when they act humble. Or rock stars or people that have greatness in them. We're like, wow, they're still humble. Like, it's a beautiful thing. But it's an ugly thing when you're not humble. It's ugly. When you see somebody that's just filled up with pride and just full of themselves, it's an ugly thing. So that reflects outwardly. So you got to get your inside right so you could see the world for the beautiful world that it is, life for what it is. You want to know what the meaning of life is? You create it. Get your inside right, get your soul right, get your mind right. I'm going off on the fucking tangent. It's a fucking half hour now, but I'm telling you, man, that's how important meaning is. And I had to put some energy in this motherfucker because it's my intention. It's my energy, yo. I don't want people to feel this shit, yo. Last time, the energy wasn't there, yo. But I think I said a lot more. I want people to be able to value the life that they have, yo, and the things that they have around them. This 2020, man, a lot of people meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people, yo. It was hard. It challenged us. And I heard Mark Manson again. He said that how it really amplified what people were before. And 2020, I spent a lot of time learning because I felt confused and I wanted to understand more. And I just dove into books and tried to build my knowledge up, you know. So when he said that, it made me realize, like, yo, that's who I was before. I wanted to learn. I was thirsty for knowledge. I was thirsty for understanding. It was like it built my power up. It built my soul up. And now I have a better understanding of history and context and etymology and liberal arts, and I'm a lot freer because of that. My mind is a lot more free, and I'm able to look at this trickery, these games that's put on us, you know. So that's why I get so cheesed about this shit. But all right, I don't want to take any more anybody's time, but Next one, yo, I think the next one I'm gonna do is about dogma. All right, but yo, peace and love, y'all.